And away we go. It is the BCJ podcast right here on BearcatJournal.com, brought to you as always by our good friends at the Holy Grail. It is the unquestioned number one sports bar in the city of Cincinnati. So when you're down at the Banks, for whatever reason, Reds game, Bengals game, maybe a basketball game sometime coming up this winter, make sure you are stopping by to see our good friends at the Holy Grail. Great food, great drinks, and remember, when you get Cincy Light at the Holy Grail, they will donate an additional 50 cents from every purchase back into the Cincy Reigns Collective that supports athletes at the University of Cincinnati. Support those that support us. Support those that support the athletes at the University of Cincinnati every time you stop by the Holy Grail. All right, let's get this show on the road. Our preview series continues as we get ready to take a look at the West Virginia Mountaineers. But first, my esteemed co-host, David Simone. Dave, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. I do need to say something off the top. I believe Brent attended this wedding, but I wanted to give a special congratulations to a loyal listener, Bucky Cooper and his new bride on their wedding recently. Someone else informed me about that, so I wanted to, say congratulations and hope they're listening tonight. But anyway, yes, West Virginia. Chris joined us last year. Grateful to have him back again. I want to start with last year. We're at Big 12 Media Days. The Mountaineers were picked to finish last. Neil Brown took great offense to that and said, we will not finish last. And they did not come anywhere close to finishing last. So coming off of that, just what are kind of the overall vibes in Morgantown? Does he have everyone on board for 2024 after last year? Are there still some outliers with the kind of want to see more? Like, what did last year do to his status and kind of the fan base as we go into this year?
Oh, it's interesting because I think what happened last year, what happened in the offseason, which we can talk about in a second, basically kick things down the road a little bit, the evaluation period, the contract, everything like that, because last year, obviously 9 wins, that's pretty great. Everybody's happy about that. But then there was a lot of nitpicking about the schedule. Hey, things got soft. Hey, some of the teams you keep having to face the backup quarterback starter got hurt. This, you caught a lot of breaks. You beat UNC where half their team was sitting out the whole game, all that stuff. A lot of things that some of the negative people will say that are always looking for the downside of things. Now, there shouldn't be any excuses either way. There shouldn't be any, hey, this schedule's too soft. West Virginia plays, I believe it's 16 ahead of them in the Big 12 media preseason poll. They play 5 of them, or maybe even all 6. They play very few of the teams that are at the bottom of the preseason poll. They play Penn State. They play Pitt out of conference. And here you go. Like, this is, again, I felt like last year was this is the year to prove it or not. And now I feel like this year is. And I don't know if that's kind of a statement about the world of college football, that every year is a prove it or not kind of year for every coach everywhere, more or less. But I think that's where things are at Virginia.
We know a lot about Garrett Green, had a real strong season. We know the Mountaineers are going to run the ball. They got several good backs that displayed that last year. Offensive line, sets all of that up. Zach Frazier being, in the NFL now, being as big of a piece as he has been for them for a long time, not just playing offensive line, but I imagine one of, if not the preeminent leaders on the team. Where do things stand replacing him and just the whole offensive line as a whole? How does that look going into 2024?
Yeah, I think to your point about Zach Frazier, how do you replace that? An All-American guy who started at center for 3 years, guard the year before that as a true freshman for most of the season, and was the constant leader in the locker room, in the weight room, everything like that. I think that's where they're going to miss it most. As far as the offensive line goes, experience-wise and skill-wise, you lose Frazier to the NFL. Doug Nestor was another starter who signed NFL free agent deal, but you essentially have 5 starters back somehow still because left tackle Wyatt Milan, who's been projected potential first-round pick, is back at left tackle. Tomas Rimac is back at left guard. Brandon Yates was a starter at right guard last year, but will start at center this year. Jaquay Hubbard, who has spent time starting at right tackle 2 years ago, split some time at right guard last year. He's supposed to start at right guard. He started, I believe it's like 8 to 10 games, so he's got experience. And then Nick Malone, who subbed in for an injured Wyatt Milan and an injured Doug Nestor and has started a handful of games himself last year, is supposed to start at right tackle. So all 5 starters on the offensive line for West Virginia, or projected starters, started at least 4 games last season, even though they lost 2 starters. So I think things are pretty solid right now.
Wide receiver seems like a spot that they attacked in the portal. Not sure if that was just from we didn't get what we wanted out of the guys we had last year, or if guys on the team from last year left. Who are the main weapons in the passing game that everyone needs to pay attention to going into the year?
Can I answer that in about 2 weeks after fall camp? Because I don't know if they know. To your point, a couple of the guys, 4 of the top 5 receivers, if you include tight end, are back from last season. But that leading receiver was Hudson Clement with 22 catches out of those 4 guys. So I'm still not sure there's a very much of a known quantity, or at least nothing that's game-breaking alpha receiver type that's coming back. So you got a few of those guys that are decent, that are solid, that you can rely on in certain situations. But they hit the portal, just like you said, because they wanted more. They wanted a lot more. They went and got Jaden Bray from Oklahoma State, who battled some injuries and fell out of the starting lineup. They're hoping he can rebound and get back to old form. And then Justin Robinson, who was one of the top receivers in the country out of high school, signed with Georgia, national champion Georgia, ended up at Mississippi State, is back. He's 6'4", 220, runs a legitimate 4.5. It's just, can you get everything else together? I think some of it's maybe mental and consistent is what you're looking for from him. And I think that's what they shot for in the portal, was who can be our guy that really makes a play. But Traylon Ray, Hudson Clement, Preston Fox, all guys who were solid last season, and I expect to be part of the rotation again this year too.
I'll jump into the corner spot a little bit later because I think there's a lot to discuss there. But in just kind of previewing, it seemed like, and this might have not been any surprise to you guys, or it might have been a big surprise. Coming off of the season that they had, I was surprised to see how many impact defensive players entered the portal. Was that a surprise to you? Not a surprise because maybe they were getting bumped out from someone else coming up. But I know 2D linemen, a couple, whatever you guys call them, edges, linebackers, or whatever, and then a couple corners that I thought, you had the starters that exhausted eligibility, and then 2 guys that from the outside would have seemed like the natural replacements. They jumped as well. Was the defensive transfers out a surprise?
Not entirely. I'm rolling through it. Some of the safeties, like Lance Dixon, fell out of favor after the Houston game. Herky McLaurin was a backup. That I say backup, but he got basically starters reps, so he was in there. Andrew Wilson Lamp I believe he started the season opener, and then I don't think he played more than 20 snaps a game the rest of the season. He fell out of favor very quickly. Keyshawn Cobb was a guy that got hurt. They thought he could do something. I think the biggest surprise, really, I'm rolling down the list here, was Tomi Durajaye. And honestly, that was just, he kind of 20, 30 reps a game was great. And then they're, coming back for this season, hey, you're going to play a similar role. 30 snaps a game. We need you. You're important. You're very good. And he said, you know what? I'm going to go somewhere else where I have the potential to play more, get paid a little more, ends up at Florida State. And that's where it is. And Jarrett Bartlett was one of the edge rushers, one of the bandit linebackers, as they call it. He was splitting time with Tyron Badley. And they were kind of packages guys. Bradley started in this package, and Bartlett started in another. And I think after 4 years of kind of being in that role, Bartlett and WVU essentially mutually agree, like, hey, you did great here. Thank you for your time. If you want to do something else, go somewhere else. By all means, you have our blessing. And that's kind of how it worked out there.
Well, we'll talk about him then because he's on transferred to UC. So give us an idea of what I mean. I air quote early returns. Seems like an outstanding guy right off the bat, and UC coming off a 3-9 season. You obviously need excellent football players, but I think there were elements of leadership and just a buy-in that were lacking in Scott Satterfield's first season. So what can we kind of expect from Jared?
Yeah, I think it's a great pickup. He is, just like you said, like, I don't think there's going to be any issues with any of that. If you talk to people around the program about some of the guys that transferred out, there's some the coaches won't say anything bad about them. They'll just choose not to say anything at all, or they'll say, hey, they're looking for playing time. And with Bartlett, it was just glowing reviews about his time here and what he provided. They wished him luck, and he's a great young man. And he is. I still remember the very first time I saw him in person when he was a true freshman that had arrived in summer. I was covering a recruiting camp in Morgantown, and he walked in. I was like, "Holy cow, who's that dude?" And like, that's the freshman, and he looked like a grown man already. And I think he has the potential to have a couple games that'll just blow your mind. Like, I could still recall, I think it was his freshman or sophomore year, where he had 3 sacks and like 6 other hurries against Virginia Tech. Almost single-handedly won that game for West Virginia a couple years ago. And you were thinking, this is it. This guy is going to be the next almost Bruce Irvin. You're thinking of him in that light as far as West Virginia fans go. And it just wasn't that consistent. But you could see glimpses of that periodically throughout his career. So you can see what he can do at times, and it's really special.
With the corner situation, the starters being gone, a couple guys transferring out, is that probably defensively the spot you would say either has the most questions going into camp and or the biggest concern on the defense?
Possibly. Maybe we'll talk linebacker in a minute, but cornerback is a lot more up in the air, I think, just for the point you said. Last year, they had 2 guys that played basically 95% of all the snaps at cornerback, and they're both gone. They're both graduated. They're both done. Their backup last year, who only played, a series a game, 2 series a game maybe, was Jacoby Spells. He got hurt in the second practice of spring football and is still not back. He had to have surgery, upper body injury. You know how the coaches are when they describe that stuff. I'm assuming shoulder or something. Still not back. They're hoping he's back by the time the season starts, but camp started today, July 31st. Not ready. So a lot of question marks there. And granted, they tried to answer it. They went out and got 5 or 6 transfer corners, guys with experience starting, and they're hoping that out of those 5 or 6 guys, they'll find 2, hopefully 3, maybe 4, and can have some depth behind the 2 starters. And I think the reason I would say I'm more concerned about linebacker, we'll get to in a second, is I think that at corner, you're at least gonna find 2 guys, I think, out of those 6 that they brought in, to be serviceable. Because, like, Garnett Hollis from Northwestern, he started all of last season for Northwestern and was one of the best corners in the Big Ten for one of the best passing defenses in the country, statistically speaking. So I'm assuming he's going to at least be serviceable for WVU. Aiden Garnes graded out excellent as far as PFF goes at Duquesne, and so on and so forth. So I think they'll be able to find 2 there.
So you mentioned, when I said is that the spot with the most questions or concern, you kind of hesitated a bit because clearly you're thinking that that's a toss-up. So linebacker, what is the question or concern going into the year at that spot?
All right, let me break it down. There's 2 spots, 2 true linebacker spots. There are 4 scholarship players that are really in the 2 deep here. One of them suffered a catastrophic knee injury before last season, underwent surgery, missed the entire year, has never played a collegiate snap. The second one played 4 games, suffered a catastrophic knee injury, had to undergo surgery, missed the rest of the season, is just now getting back. The third one was buried on the depth chart behind all those guys, came in game 5 last year as a true freshman, graded out as the lowest rated player, according to PFF, on WVU's defense for the entire season. The fourth one is a transfer from Ohio State who hasn't seen a single defensive snap in 3 seasons. And that's WVU's too deep in the linebacker spot. Now, Trotter, the first guy I mentioned, he was supposed to be as a true freshman. He was a freshman All-American or a high school All-American. He was supposed to start as a true freshman. He was that good, but he's hurt. Trey Lathan was great when he got thrown in there, but he got hurt. So there is a world where it's fine, maybe even good with those guys. But I've seen these things go sideways too often to think, hey, 2 guys with devastating knee injuries and 2 guys who probably shouldn't have been playing last year are going to be Big 12 level linebackers right now.
Yeah, I could see why you would be concerned. I mean, there's glass half full, but then there's evidence
that was purposefully negative,
right?
But
typically,
just to prove my point,
you can be excited, but you also have a lot of evidence that guys don't typically come back from big injuries, or all of a sudden, like in Reed's case. And I'm being from in Ohio, like we know some stuff about Ohio State, so he obviously caught my attention when he transferred to West Virginia. But it's like and they have great players. I mean, he could end up being just fine, but you're going to be counting on a guy that's going into his 4th year that's really never played defense. So there's just a lot of TBD, I guess you could say, on that whole group.
Right.
So taking the offense, defense, everything together, the schedule that you mentioned that has some challenges, whether it's out of conference, whether it's in conference. What to you is kind of the 1 or 2 areas, whether they're on offense, defense, special teams, that is kind of the make or break is probably too strong of a term, but the difference potentially between like a little bit of a backslide because of the harder schedule, or backing up the 9 wins from last year and getting even more people, on board with the direction that things are going.
Yeah, I think the key to being as good as last year is kind of those 2 spots we talked about. Are you going to be able to find serviceable cornerbacks, and can you find serviceable linebacker play? I don't want to set the bar too high and say, hey, these guys got to come in like Beanie Bishop, who ended up, a transfer that became All-American.
Right.
Not that. Just serviceable at those couple positions. And I think West Virginia can be just as good as they were last year. They can get to 9 wins, even with a tougher schedule. If they want to be better, if they want to compete for a Big 12 championship game type appearance, top 15 in the country kind of level, Garrett Green has to go to another level. He has to more fully evolve his game, and that offense has to more fully evolve as well. It was last year, and as they should have, hey, we're going to run, and then we'll throw it deep. As Neil Brown said, Garrett Green's only going to complete 50% of his passes, whether he throws it 40 yards or 4 yards. So why not throw it 40 yards? It's true, but with a whole season, a whole year to kind of develop, you're kind of hoping that he can develop that short and middle passing game that will, make this offense even more explosive.
I mean, at that point in the season last year, UC was a mess. So it's hard to take anything away from that game, specifically speaking. But I mean, he had quite a day. I mean, it was a lot of. It felt like a lot of 7-on-7, at least in the first half. But I can see where you get sucked in, so to speak, with that type of game when he's throwing it well and running it as well as he can. And you just want, if he can just be a couple percentage points better in the completion percentage, or, a little bit better in the intermediate stuff, it will open up so much more for them. So I imagine that's kind of how you guys are viewing his growth from last year to this year.
Yeah. I think
Chad,
that's fair to
oh,
say.
sorry.
Yeah.
Chad, you got anything for Chris?
I'm just curious. Is there any fear of like Pickle? It's the third host of the show. She joins us occasionally. Of there being it's such a weird kind of place for West Virginia, right? Like last year was expected to be bad, it ended up not being bad. Like, how is that following year? How are they gonna follow up that success? Because there are some questions. How is the fan base handling that? Reaching the height of last year might not be like in the cards again this year. Is everybody expecting, okay, we turned it around, let's take another step?
Fan base is split. You got a lot of people who grew up basically during the old Big East days, where every couple years West Virginia was in. Every 3 years or so, 3 years, West Virginia was in the BCS game and winning 10, 11, 12 games. Those days, I think right now are not here. They're not here right now. People need to realize that. Can he get there? Sure. I mean, but it's going to take a lot more than just one player. It's going to take more than one recruiting class. Somebody posted, I'm trying to find out where it was in the W circles, but this would be if West Virginia could win more than 9 games, it would be the first coach other than Rich Rod maybe in West Virginia history to win 9 and then try to win more. Like, it's not easy to do. But I don't want to tell the fans that. They're not going to listen to that. They're not going to like that. And honestly, right now, as far as the fan base goes, fractured maybe too much of a word, but there's so much going on right now in the athletic department and that had changed with this coach because fans were already split on Neil Brown, and then they've kicked athletic director Shane Lyons out and essentially pinned the blame on him, saying he was being too stingy about NIL, about collectives and all that stuff. And that was why West Virginia wasn't winning. That's why West Virginia was losing transfers. They kicked him out. West Virginia won 9 games. They retained talent better than they have at any point during this brief transfer portal era. And then they added a lot of players too. So now people are like, wait, was it the athletic director? Is it the president? Is it the school? People are confused on who to blame here. And so I think there's a lot of confusion and different opinions around the West Virginia fan base in this program right now.
We'll get a basketball question in before we let you go. Early returns on the new, was it Darren DeVries? Is that right?
Darren DeVries, that's right. It looks like Darian DeVries, but it is Darren DeVries.
I know that last year was probably a rough winter. New coach, a lot of
Yeah, you want to talk about a fractured fan base? Figured out who to blame. That's there you go.
But how are things going? Trying to bounce back from last year?
Pretty well so far. Now he's a pretty tight circle about what's going on, what their plan is. It was pretty touch and go there for a while because they still haven't filled out the roster, and I'm told they're still kind of recruiting some foreign players to maybe finish out the last spot or two on this team. Except the team is now in Italy, going on an overseas trip. I don't know if they're going to be doing any recruiting while they're there, but who knows? It's possible. But he also didn't even have a complete staff until about a month ago. He kind of added a couple of guys to his staff, said, okay, let's go with this, try to finish out the roster, recruit a couple of transfers, then I'll worry about the rest of my staff later. It was an odd, kind of timeline about how everything worked out because then they circled back on assistants that they could have had 3 months ago. But I think at the end line here, at the finish line, and you just look at it, say, hey, roster looks okay. You got a couple really good players, Javon Smalls, Tucker DeVries, a couple other transfers that seem useful. And you got a pretty good coaching staff that I think if you would have told us this is the coaching staff on day one, WVU fans would have been thrilled. I think the route that got them there confused people, but looks pretty solid.
it certainly helps when the coach's kid is pretty damn good.
Yeah, when you go to the introductory press conference and say, "Hey, my potential All-American son is also coming with me," so that was a good start.
Yeah.
It's a monster looking at this league and trying to figure out how to climb up it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is.
How do you compare it to the old Big East? Because what I've said is that I think there are definitely comparisons, but I don't see as many bad teams in this league as there used to be. I mean, DePaul was dreadful. Seton Hall went through a stretch where they weren't very good. South Florida was bad. Like, there were some nights in the old Big East, even though it was a monster, there were some nights in that old Big East where you could take a breath. It feels like in this league, man, if you take a breath, you're going to lose to a team that, Cincinnati against West Virginia last year, perfect example. I think it was pretty clear Cincinnati had, a better roster, or at least were playing better together than West Virginia was. But they kind of took their eye off the prize, and West Virginia jumps up and gets them. That's a lot more likely in this league than I thought the old Big East was.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, even going back and just maybe think about some of those times when they would release the schedule, and I would hear stories about essentially Huggins, and even before that, Beeline, like, just, oh God, I hope we get the 2 games against Seton Hall or somebody, not
South
UConn.
Florida, right? Yeah,
that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, I mean, you look and there's probably a couple teams you think that are going to be down this year. But I still think there's going to be so much talent on every roster that if you're not ready to go on any given night, you're going to take an L. And if you take an unexpected L in this league, making it up is not much fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, that dreadful WVU team last year, the most losses in school history, beat Kansas. And
right.
and was competitive and almost beat, Iowa State in Ames and stuff like that. So it's that's the kind of league it is, you're right.
Where can everybody find you, Chris, and keep up with West Virginia?
You can find us over at EerSports.com. That's EERsports.com. And you can find me on Twitter at CMAnderson247.
Appreciate you coming on, man. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out and let us know.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, there you go. Chris Anderson previewing West Virginia. Dave, our old friends, the Mountaineers. They're going to be really interesting to follow this year. I think they're, we were in that situation last year where we were talking about the variance of like what could happen is vast.
Yeah. I mean, they've got, especially offensively, I think they've got a lot of fun, good parts. But in this league, do you get the 5 home game? I haven't played the schedule game with their schedule, but I know they got Penn State and Pitt, and if they've got 5 or 4 home games, who do you get at home? Who do you got on the road? He mentioned I think he said they're picked to finish 7th, and maybe play like 5 or 6 of the teams picked to finish ahead of them. So, you're going to get tested every week, and if you're not on it, I mean, it took them. He talked about it. They did have 9 wins, and I think from the outside, you think and 9 wins is 9 wins to me. Like, I'm not dissecting.
You win 9 games, you get credit for winning 9 games.
But they had a Hail Mary at Houston.
Yeah.
And, so that's, probably looking at 8. And then if they're, I don't know all their other games, but like if there's one more situation and they're kind of like that, you're at 7. And then you can see why some fans are like, that was kind of a fool's gold season. I think you should deserve more credit than that. Like, you win the game, you win the game. How it happens isn't my isn't my problem as a fan, shouldn't be their problem. But you can understand why some fans would be like, yeah, that 9's a little inflated. So it'll be interesting. I mean, they have some turnover on defense. See how the corners do. And yes, sir.
Fool's gold, Mountaineers. I get it.
Well, I wasn't even trying. But anyway, Yeah, I mean, all these teams in that kind of middle of the Big 12. I think you have your 2 or 3 that a lot of people, kind of consistently put towards the top. But then there's a big group in the middle that it really is going to depend on who you're playing, where you're playing them, and kind of what stage in your season you're at, how that is going to shift, how it's all going to shake out.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think people, when we talked last year about coin flip games, and it's not going to be much different this year. I think we're a little more cautious on that this year because they lost all the coin flips a year ago. But it's the case for everybody in this league. Everybody is dealing with coin flip games, through the bulk of their schedule because frankly, there's really nobody that's separate at the top. I don't think there's a top group that is 1 or 2 teams that have distanced themselves from the pack. And 5 or 6 teams that I think we all look at. We talked about on Monday night who's going to play in the conference championship game, and nobody had the same answer.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say is Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State are that top group, but it's not like a top group here, everybody else here. I mean, it's they're maybe the top 3 to me, but the next group is right there. And those teams could easily drop down in I like Arizona a lot, even with the coaching change. Iowa State, where are they going to fall in this? There's just a lot of movement that can happen, and that top group isn't it's not like a Georgia, Alabama top group like we've seen in the SEC of late, and then everybody else. It's those are maybe the 3 best teams, but there's that status is tenuous at best, depending on how things go.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's a fun league to watch because from week to week, you get home from the game and pull up the scores, and there's going to be 2 or 3 of them that you're didn't see that coming.
Yeah, with 16 teams now, I mean, there, I think there's a couple teams that are going to be pretty bad, but that doesn't mean that they can't. Just like last year, Houston was pretty bad, and probably should have won the West Virginia game.
Right.
So that's not out of the realm for anybody in this league this year, I don't think.
Yeah. All right, there you go. That's West Virginia. That's a timestamp brought to you by Turtles Brew. 0 sugar, 0 carbs, gluten-free, bourbon-infused sweet tea, 6% ABV, cherry lime, raspberry peach, orange, vanilla, lemonade, tea, and strawberry mint. There's over 100 locations throughout Ohio. You can get them in the jugs, or you can get them in the pouches, and either 12-ounce pouches, either a 1-pack or a 5-pack. So go to turtlesbrew.com for more information and to find the location nearest you. All right, Dave, I got to figure out how to navigate this, but we'll get into camp. It's brought to you by Homefield. Homefield has started their launch to the season, the Can't Miss Kickoff campaign, and everything in this Can't Miss Kickoff campaign is centered around the Platinum Football Box, Dave.
Sounds important and fancy.
There's a lot to it. The box contains 3 never-seen-before items for your school that are not available anywhere else. It's curated so fans have new gear to wear all season long. It's suitable for all weather conditions. And Platinum Box VIPs receive additional exclusive items, a new hat or ringer, T-shirt for Platinum VIPs only, a VIP koozie, the 2024 Platinum Pass guaranteeing 20% off and early access to your school's football releases through 2024. This will be available August 9th at 10 a.m. Eastern. They are highly limited. They will sell out.
How much is it?
So I do not have that information yet.
Okay.
I didn't see that information anywhere either. It looks like it's going to include a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, and a hoodie. But I do have, I don't know if you saw, Chad, when you were doing the read, I do have it pulled up as far as what an example box would look like. And it does guarantee that 20% off every time.
Does it come with a platinum watch and a platinum ring?
No.
Well, that would be cool if it did. And maybe like a signed album from Birdman and Manny Fresh and Lil Wayne.
I mean, look. If you're getting a t-shirt, a crew neck or a long sleeve, a hoodie, a hat, a mug, or a koozie, like some socks, a hat, that's all you're gonna need.
I know. I mean, I like it. I might, it scares me a little to be flying blind on like the gear I'm gonna get, but at the same time I like it because it's VIP-ish. It's not stuff that anybody else can get. So I might get something sweet and someone be like, "Where do I get that?" I'm just like, "You can't. You're not platinum enough."
They also, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this yet or not, but they are at some point during Can't Miss Kickoff. Cincinnati is getting a coach's jacket released as well.
Oh, dude, the Tennessee one's already circulating on our group chat. It's sweet.
Yeah,
smoky gray with orange accents.
They also said if I wanted to, I could send them the name and addresses of the people that work on the podcast with me, and they will send them gear to wear as well.
I think you should do that.
Got my Great Midwest.
I'll happily give you my name and address, and you can.
Yeah, I'm on that.
And my sizes, and I'm A-okay with that.
All right, I'll see what I can do. We'll try to make something happen. That's platinum, all right. You're right, Jeremy. Thanks for the continued subscription. 19 months. We haven't been doing this channel much longer than 19 months. So Jeremy has been a member from the start. So we appreciate you, Jeremy.
That's right. Thank
you. Crypt Keeper once hired, but homefieldapparel.com is where you're going to find all that. We are getting you ready. August 9th is the launch.
Do you have the new promo code for this year?
I'm not yet. We're working on that.
Okay. That was in the email. I didn't. Okay.
I don't have it. Well, there's nothing to put the promo code in for yet for the platinum box.
I know last month you could still use BCJ 23. So
yeah. I'm guessing it's going to be BCJ 24.
Do we know if the promo code will work on the platinum box, or will that be on only on like regular website offerings?
I believe it'll work.
I'll try and get an email out to them during the show and see if I can get an answer before the end of the show. If not, then we'll see if we can get that answer before next.
Yeah, we'll have everything ready for next week. They all just sent that today, so they're just now getting everything ready to go. Everything's supposed to go be starting tomorrow, but we have a podcast tonight, and I didn't want to short them a week and letting people know that
August 1st rollout. So
yeah, the platinum box is coming on the 9th. So excited about that. Skinner update. Yeah, it doesn't look good, David. Doesn't look good.
Yeah.
He visited South Carolina, I believe, today. Michael Skinner, Cincinnati's top-rated recruit, has been offered by the home state school of South Carolina. Yeah. Well, they were trying to get both of them, Dave.
Got the Greek freak.
Yeah. So I don't feel great about it. But that's this is the camp report brought to you by Homefield Apparel as day one, Nippert Stadium.
Finally,
The Bearcats
That's
have
our back
come
in
back.
the first stadium. SummerSlam edition.
Aaron's just popping in and
Just-
out. Hi, Aaron. Yeah, I mean, it's day one. There's never a ton to report on day one. A lot of install, a lot of individual stuff, a lot of special teams. I asked Coach Satterfield today what it was like to have the best backup punter in America on roster because some of the punts today from Max Fletcher, oh goodness. I was messing with Mason afterwards, like you can't let him do that to you on day one.
Is he lefty too?
I didn't even pay attention. I was just watching the ball.
We should go two-punter formation.
Just have both of them back there.
You don't know who's going to kick it.
They can roll out either way.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I would say the biggest news I think of the day. Well, obviously Dante Corleone was out there. He was not doing anything live since most of the practice was non-contact. He was out there for a good bit, especially, when the defensive line was off to the side, working as a group. He was out there for a lot of that stuff. Not cleared for full contact, not cleared for live action, but obviously good to see day one Dante out there getting some work in. I talked to him a little bit after practice. He said he's feeling good. That he's hopeful that everything gets squared away and he'll be ready for the start of the season. But we got 3.5, 4 weeks to go before the end of camp. You've got the 3 days this week, and then the 2 weeks at higher ground, and then another week back on campus. It's a long way to go before they get to game week. So
yeah, I mean, I think
hopeful,
for him
but it's a good sign that he was out there.
Right. I would say, I'll use the line from The Great Outdoors when he's putting down the old 96er and Dan Aykroyd puts his ear to John Candy's stomach and processing nicely. Because if you'd have walked out there today and he's with the rehab guys and he's just kind of, jogging up and down the sidelines, that's one thing. But he was out there going through a lot of the, drill work and stuff like that. So there has to be some level of progression from not doing anything to starting to do, light cardio and to heavier cardio to lifting to, all right, now we're going to start doing some actual football-like things, but still, obviously monitoring that. So it's, and hopefully there's no setbacks, and I'm sure there's other things that have been going on behind the scenes to put him in a position where they even allow him to do what he did today in front of the assembled local media.
Your signal is a wreck right now, Dave. There you go. I think you're back.
So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. You're back.
Okay. So, but yeah, hopefully
you went max headroom on us for like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully he's, things are just moving in a good direction for him.
The other, I think, interesting piece of information today, Brendan Sorsby looks different. When he got here, he's up pushing 240 pounds. He had kind of a linebacker look to him in the spring. I was told today he's down to 227 and looked a little bit more like a quarterback out there today, Dave. So they said they're looking to get him a little faster. I think it's clear that they do intend on using him, effectively in the running game. Even he's not a scrambling quarterback, but he is a guy that has run in the past, and I expect him to be used in that fashion here. But you will notice it if you get to camp here anytime soon. It is something you notice right away that his body composition is quite a bit different.
You were very choppy there for me. Can you hear me?
Barely. I don't know which one of us is choppy and which one of us is not, but your picture is very unclear. So something's going on with the Simone family.
All
Internet
right, Aaron,
connection
can you
thing
jump
right
in
now.
here for a second?
Truthfully, you guys both sound terrible. If I'm being completely honest,
So do
Awesome.
you.
maybe it's StreamYard. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we all need to take turns leaving and coming back one by one.
Feel free to do it. I'll hang out here and be the last.
Yeah, Aaron's all choppy for me too.
Great. Just great. Thanks, StreamYard. Anyhow,
well-
Aaron, can you am I choppy for you, Aaron?
Yes.
Oh. I look great to me. Normally it kind of shows. Things sound great on YouTube. Okay, so we'll just keep going. Maybe it's just a studio thing. But Dave is back. Hi, David.
Hello.
Okay. Your audio sounds okay. Your video's not great, but
Okay.
all right, Aaron. I'll finish my point and then maybe I'll come back in a minute.
It's
Free
Whatever.
season for everyone.
This is outstanding.
First day of camp for everybody. Can you hear me, Dave? Do I still sound choppy to you?
You sound like garbage, but whatever.
Power through
I
it.
mean, it makes it hard to talk if nobody can talk to each other.
I mean, I can understand what you're saying. It's more of like, how does it sounding to the audience? I mean, I'm fine otherwise.
I just Sorsby looks different. I mean, he looks a little bit more like a quarterback now than a linebacker. So that was one of the things that jumped off the page today.
Yeah, I have a pretty unstable connection right now, but my camera, you always look fine on your own camera. The choppiness doesn't show up on our own feed, so it's tough to tell. But how did he throw it?
Threw it well. I mean, he threw it well. I thought he spread it around great. I don't think it was intentional, but to start 7-on-7, I think his first 5 passes went to each of the 5 primary receiving targets. So I like that. He went to Xavier Henderson. He went to Tyron Smith. He went to Tony Johnson. He went to Joe Royer, and he got a ball completed out of the backfield to Kiner. So I think that's a good sign that already he's kind of moving the ball around. I think that was something that they frankly couldn't do last year. So I thought that was good. Everybody, I don't know if the wind was bothering. It looked like the balls were getting knocked down, the deep ball, to where they just didn't have a lot of drive going into like the student section, which is the way the offense was going most of the morning. And normally you're concerned if you see it on one guy, but then like when you see multiple guys trying to push it down the field and the ball's just not carrying right, you figure it's more, outside of their control than just everybody being a little short today. So, right. But I mean, there were throws over the middle, a lot of stuff to the sidelines. He threw a great ball to Aaron Turner, kind of over a linebacker, under a safety, like 25 yards downfield, that I thought was probably the play of the day. So I thought overall it looked pretty good.
Stick on the offense. We've talked over the last 2 weeks in the lead up. We know what Xavier Henderson is. One practice in, we're not going to make any declarations or anything, but just the group of others at receiver. What was your initial impression of those guys, going in a true sense of getting ready for a season?
I think Tony Johnson's going to be good. I think we liked him in the spring. He missed the end of the spring. It wasn't anything major, but they held him out. It was good to see him back out there today. I like what I've seen from Tony Johnson so far. Tyron Smith is just a smooth route runner, like quick, shifty, gets in and out of his cuts, has good acceleration. But he's a guy that one of those pesky slot guys that, you know, why is he always open? Why can't we guard him type guy? Because he does have that, like, you know, little shake to him that allows him to create a little space. Jamoy Mays, this is my first time getting a look at him. A little bit undersized, but they like his versatility from what I know. He can play the slot, but I'd say he's probably initially going to be the backup to Tony Johnson, or compete with Tony Johnson for that number 2 spot. And then if you need him inside, you can use him inside. Aaron Turner, we kind of know, you know, what he is. Didn't see a lot from Barry Jackson today, but it's day one. You know, I don't put a lot of weight into that. But yeah, I mean, you know, the biggest question for me is still who's behind Henderson. Evan Prater was out there and ran some routes as that guy. Sterling Buckhalter. So one of those guys is going to have to step up and show that they are capable of backing up Henderson, because you know, I don't think you want him out there every snap. But otherwise, I think there's talent. They just have to work it in.
Right. Offensive line, there's, I mean, what are we supposed to talk about day one offensive line?
The biggest thing I think is Wilder was with the ones at right tackle.
Yeah.
And we've kind of prefaced that we thought that was going to be the case. Just wanted to see it before we really committed to anything. But I think he's probably going to be the guy to beat at right tackle. And then Buford and Lozowicki will be nipping at his heels.
Right. It's equally hard then to counter that and talk defensive line. But I mean, the Dante thing is up in the air. We had the new unfortunate news yesterday of Micah Coleman being out for the year. I mean, who were some of the main, like, especially at end? Like, where are they going at end right now?
Marquez Parker, baby.
Hey, that's my guy. That's my guy.
He was already out there.
That's a hell of a lot to put on a true freshman.
He was already out there a lot today. I do think Rob Jackson looks better. I think you're going to be able to get some snaps out of him. I don't know if he's going to be, you know, a freak that's going to record a bunch of sacks this year, but you have to have some bodies out there. And, you know, he is a massive human being.
I don't even know if this makes sense, but they seem pretty, and he might, like, can Brian Sims come down? Because they seem pretty well off at linebacker.
I think Sims is at like 225 pounds.
Okay, maybe not. I mean, that would be
they list him on the roster. They list him on the roster at 228. He does not look like a defensive lineman anymore. Right.
That would be like a pass rush specialist, you know, singularly. Yeah. But at this point, like, who's right? Like, Eric Phelps is not really your typical, like, pass rushing defensive end. We don't have any type of record of Rob Jackson. Marquise Parker is a true freshman. Like, who is rushing the passer? Jared Bartlett can be that guy, but he's kind of now morphed into more of the linebacker. Do they have to move him back? Darian Varner, I guess, is in that role.
Varner's definitely going to be a guy that they're going to lean on.
He's really the only guy with any game experience, unless you do something different with Jared Bartlett than you've been doing since he's got here.
Cam Rutherford was out there quite a bit today. The Arkansas Pine Bluff transfer. I mean, they've got bodies. It's just the problem is we don't know.
We had bodies. We had bodies last year, and we saw what that meant getting to the quarterback. So
yeah, I mean, Aaron, it does seem like it's whatever hiccup StreamYard had. It seems like it's clearing up.
Mm-hmm.
Give me 1 second. That's a concern I have, Dave. I mean, I hate to say this on day one because I do think it looks different when they put pads on, but it did not look like a high-level Big 12 defensive line unit in helmets and jerseys. Sure.
Right.
I mean, you want a bunch of dudes looking like Rob Jackson, not one, right? Like, and then I mean, I think Jalen Hunt's going to be fine. I don't know. Like it did draw some concern for me that it just didn't look like it didn't look like a group of massive humans, if that makes sense.
On the outside, I think they've got the bodies on the interior.
Really? I mean, if Dante's limited,
Well, they had the other transfer. I can't think of his name right now. Defensive tackle as well.
Yeah.
From SEMO, I think.
Yeah.
Southeast Missouri State.
They have. I did talk to a couple, and his name is. There's so many damn transfers.
Oh, I know, and I don't have an updated roster, so I can't even. I can't just. I have one over here to the right of me, but he's not going to be on there. So
I'll have it in a second, but yeah, I mean, I still think they're thin inside. Like I think they're okay as long as everything goes according to plan.
Yeah,
but
if
things don't exactly go according to plan, like I think you get thin there pretty quick, don't you?
Right. Oh, I know. I don't disagree.
Harris Adams. I can't see Dingle moving to rush in for third down. I mean, no. I think we're all I think we're all trying to answer questions that don't really have an answer by just like latching. Can Dingle do it? Can Sims do it? Can you move Bartlett back there? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I think it's just one of those, it's an almost impossible spot to recruit the portal if you're not a team with a massive war chest in NIL.
No,
and it's a very difficult position to recruit out of high school because there's just not a lot of those freakish guys that are 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". Like I said on the board today, like Luke recruited one of them and could never find another Majay in his 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not easy dudes to just pluck out of the recruiting treasure chest, and you got to develop them, and that generally takes a little while.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Secondary. So much talk has been about the secondary, partly because of last year, partly because of the shift to the 3-3-5. First impressions, let's start at corner outside of Jordan Young. Anybody do anything of note today?
I spent most of my day watching the safeties because I think for me that is probably the most interesting spot on this defense. I think even if your corners are average, if they're bad, you're in trouble. Like let's be honest here. But if your corners are average, I think your safeties can help you mask some of that, especially with 3 of them on the field. Mm-hmm. I plan on hopefully, because these first 3 days where they don't have pads on it's best to kind of watch the skill guys.
Oh yeah.
Because watching the big guys, you don't really get anything out of it in a time like this. So I'm going to pay attention a little bit more to corner tomorrow. I did see DJ Taylor was at corner today. Kalen Carroll caught my eye a couple times. Amore Arnold, I remember once or twice, but I didn't have my my sights dialed in. And the hard part is they just didn't do a lot of 7-on-7. I think they did one 7-on-7 period and one team period.
Yeah.
And you just, it's like 7 to 10 minutes of each, and you just don't get a lot of like normal,
for sure.
You don't see a lot of reps, I guess is the best way to put it. So I watched a lot of safety today. So feel free to ask about safety.
All right, I'm going to ask about safety. We brought in a lot of them, or a lot of guys that have played, could play, might be able to play. Do you think we did it? Do you think one day in, did they get a passing grade on those acquisitions?
They look good today, and it's a lot of the group that was here in the spring. So it's guys that I have watched and at least was familiar with. I think if I had to right now, Dave, I think if I had to pick 3 guys as the most likely to start at safety, I think I could do that today.
Okay.
I think Josh Minkins, who had an interception today on Lichty, that was good. I think he starts at one of the outside safeties. I think Derek Canteen starts at one of the outside safeties. And then I think Josh Minkins starts at the star position.
Wait, no, you just said him already.
Or not Minkins, but
Mekhi Miller.
Mekhi Miller, yeah. Mekhi Miller starts at the sky position.
Okay.
Star position.
Which
it's a lot of info running around my brain today.
Of course. And so then, Logan, I think you asked Sad about Logan Wilson today.
Yeah, I had him down 3 different times making plays, flashing 3 different times in my notes, which is pretty strong.
Pretty impressive for him to come over to UC on his day off with the Bengals and play safety.
Yeah. They look different. I don't think they're related.
No, I don't either.
Just a hunch, but I don't think they are.
So I
thought he looked pretty good.
Him and Kai Stokes.
And then I think Jaquan Sanks is the most likely to be the number 2 at the star position, which that's 2 freshmen now that we're talking about being on the 2 deep, 2 true freshmen. Maybe 3.
Well, 3 because Simeon Coleman's probably going to be on the 2 deep, right?
Probably, and I think there's maybe a decent chance that Gravy is on the 2 deep as well.
At corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently he had the second fastest tracks speed over the summer at 22.5 miles an hour.
Speaking of freshmen, any of the guys that we didn't see in the spring who arrived this summer, again, 1 practice, but did any of them do anything that you noticed today?
Not really. What were you going to say, Aaron, real quick? Did you have something?
I did. I was just going to mention the fact that we have now 11 dudes who have topped out at 22 miles an hour. That was announced today, compared to 1, maybe 2 guys last season that topped out at 22 miles an hour.
Well,
all season.
I don't know if the TV showed it as much last year as it should have, but that was a slow defense. It was slow defense.
I thoroughly enjoyed that stat today. So
yeah, I would think if I'm guessing, both of the new running backs are hitting that number. And then a whole bunch of DBs, and then Aaron Turner.
Yeah, the fastest was Woodburn at 22.6. I think that's what I heard. And then behind it was Gravy at 22.5. And then a bunch of other guys filling in behind them.
Right.
But no, I think Sanks is going to be very, very, very good here. If looking the part is good for anything, we're going to talk about him a lot over the next couple of years because he looks the part. Like his legs are built like a guy that's 24 years old and been in a training program for 6 years.
Right.
So yeah, the safety spot made a lot of plays today. Like I said, Minkins had the pick on the sideline on Lichtenberg.
Good, because the
Logan
safeties
Wilson
didn't do
flashed.
shit last year.
Right.
I mean, and I know we have concern about defensive line, but like, hopefully in the 3-3-5, you can do enough up front that teams just aren't running at will, because if you are able to force teams to throw, that is playing into your hands in that type of a defense. So it's just a matter of is so much of it, and it's unfortunate to put it on one dude, but like the defensive line, so much of it stems from is Dante available.
Sure, because if Dante's available, everything kind of falls back into place.
Dante takes up two guys almost every play.
Right.
Guys can play their normal number of snaps. Like if Dante's not available, then you're asking Jalen Hunt to play probably double the snaps you would ask him to play if Dante was available.
Right.
Which I don't care how good you are.
Behind Jalen Hunt.
Right.
Well, the problem is then, I mean, any way you slice it, if Dante's not available, Hunt is going to have to play a ton of snaps.
Right. And I mean, and it doesn't matter how good he is. Like those guys are significantly better at 30 snaps than 60 snaps.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just
so Jalen Hunt's best. Jalen Hunt could play great, but at 60 snaps, that's not a sustainable workload in a game, let alone a season. I mean, imagine being in like week 9 or 10 and you're a 300 plus pounder and you're playing 60, 70 something snaps a game.
In a league where they're just trying to run right at you.
Right over your face.
Yeah.
You're playing nose, you're getting double teamed a lot. Like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So
did you notice? I mean, we could have said this from the spring as well, but now that everybody is here that is gonna potentially play a snap this season, just visually, any discernible difference between last year's guys and this year's guys? We just talked about the guys running fast, and that's all well and good, but it doesn't necessarily always transfer over to making plays in a game. But
nobody really jumped out at me as like a massive body transformation.
Right.
Rob Jackson looked a little more lean. I thought he looked more like they were trying to make him like a 5 tech or something last year, where they were trying to have extra weight on him.
Yeah.
He looked a little more natural in his frame today. But no, nobody really jumped off the page, but I didn't think of the guys that are back, like Dingle always looks impressive.
Right. I mean, the speed thing is vitally important, because that offense, defense, whatever, that was a slow football team last year.
It was.
Receivers couldn't get open. I'm not going to say Corey's slow, but he's not a break an 80-yard running back. And the defense, the skill, the athletes on defense were slow and unathletic.
Yeah, they were.
So
again, I think some of that, like I think because it's difficult when you're used to seeing them with pads on, and then you see them with pads off.
Right.
For the most part, they look smaller. Like just like
sure.
Like your eyes aren't really trained to, this is what such and such looks like. Like, what they look like when you see them around in like their street clothes or whatever. But when you see them on the field and they don't have their pads on, they all look smaller. And I'm hoping that's my eyes playing with looking at some of the defensive line, because today I looked at the defensive line and my first thought was, without Dante, how are these guys going to hold up against the run in this league? Like I said to Keegan, like the linebackers better be the best tackling damn bunch of linebackers we've ever seen in our life.
No missed tackles.
Right. So hopefully when we get out to higher ground and everybody puts pads on, I go, okay, all right, now it looks a little more like it's supposed to look. Because when you look at the the weights, like they don't look like they're too far off from what they're supposed to be, defensive ends and that
Sure.
260 to 280 range, and guys playing inside 280 to 300. Like that's pretty standard. But no, I didn't have anything written down in terms of like, oh, this guy looks a lot different than he did the last time we saw him. I'm sure some of that also is like most of these guys are new.
Mhm.
So we don't
Yeah,
have a
We're not comparing. Yeah, they're not
I don't know
comparing
what
them to anything.
yeah. So nothing that really stood out there, but some of that I think is probably more me related than it is them related. But
Right.
you know, nothing that really like jumped off the page, I guess is a good way to put it.
Right. I'm curious. Like I'm curious. I may, and a lot of this. Well, I'm not saying not a lot off the record, but like I would just be curious to just be there and going up to as many people as I could, and I would just be like, why is this year going to be different? Just
I think
very simple question that could have a very detailed answer or not, but like that's a hard one to answer. Like I think you'd have to think about it and be like, and just
let's be honest, Dave. We're more connected only goes so far.
Right.
Like there is a benefit to that. Like there is a benefit to not giving up on plays or playing for the guy next to you,
right?
As opposed to playing for yourself. Like there is absolutely something to be said for that.
Sure.
But that was, it was a problem last year.
But I think
talent was the problem.
That shit ain't worth 4 wins.
Right. Like that, we do our best to be as honest as humanly possible here. There is absolutely something to in the game of football being a more connected team, having a more connected locker room, having guys that are rowing the boat in the same direction. But if the talent problem isn't fixed, that stuff matters a lot less. If the talent is there, like that's when a team goes from here to here.
That's why why we went from the Peach Bowl to the college football playoff.
Right. Because the talent all stayed in place. And they had another year of growth as a unit with almost everybody back. And a bunch of NFL guys. So like that's the reality of it is until we get a little farther in camp and there's pads on and we're out at higher ground and those guys are showing like the defense is ahead of the offense. If we get out to higher ground and the offense is significantly ahead of the defense, I'm going to be a lot more concerned because I think they did everything they could in making this defense better in the offseason. I'm not comfortable enough yet saying they did enough. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think it's fair.
I mean,
I don't know yet.
Doing everything you can do still doesn't guarantee that means, more wins or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Other teams are doing everything that they can do as well. So
right. And when you find those connected teams that have more talent, you're not in the American anymore. Like this is not going to be a simple, okay, we had an off season and we got the locker room fixed. Because you know what breaks a locker room, Dave?
Losing.
Yeah, real quick. Especially a group that is all very new to each other. I mean, we did that exercise the other night, and I think there were 15 or right at 15 or less than 15 guys that played a snap or took a practice rep with Luke Fickell coaching this program. And that was one off season ago.
Yeah.
two off seasons ago now. So there is not a lot of continuity. There is not a lot of these guys have been with each other, and you have guys that have been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years. What accelerated the process under Luke Fickell? They won. They won a bunch of close games, and those guys, you get that confidence, you start believing in yourself, you start believing in the guy next to you, and it kind of snowballs. And I think, it's tangible because I think we can all look to, in that period, we can all look to the UCLA game and say, that was when all of a sudden these guys all looked at each other and went, oh my God, we don't suck. Right? Like, oh my God, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the ball got rolling down the hill and it started picking up steam, and it carried over for a long time. What is going to be that seminal moment for this group, new and old, to say, all right, I know this guy next to me can get the job done. And I know this guy on the other side of me can get the job done. And if I can get the job done and he can get the job done and he can get the job done, now we've got something. Because if you don't, like that, it's the most important thing for this Scott Satterfield era is the first 5 games of this season.
Yeah.
Because they're winnable. But if you don't, if Pitt comes in here and all of a sudden you've lost 7 in a row at Nippert Stadium, and then you got to go to Miami, which I think, that should be better, but they should have kicked Miami's ass last year, and they didn't because they got in the red zone 37 times and couldn't score touchdowns. What is going to be that moment where these guys all look at each other and say, okay, we're good enough to do this. We're good enough to win games at a high level.
Yeah.
I got to see it. I got to see this defense do it. I feel pretty good about the offense. I do. I got to see the defense do it.
Right. Because I feel
weird because we've been talking about great defense for a long time.
I feel pretty good about, I feel better about the offense as well. How much better? That's the thing. Is is this a whole touchdown better offense or is it a 4-point better offense? Because you got to score in the 30s.
They scored 23 a game last year.
If you're gonna damn near run 100 plays, 90 plays a game, you got to score in the 30s.
Yeah,
you give yourself a realistic fighting chance to win. A good number of football games in college football anymore. Like, we're not going to all of a sudden Iowa our way to 10 wins. So you better start scoring some points. And I feel a little bit better that the offense has more dynamic ability, more overall, just more guys that can get those 10-yard, 20-yard plays than we had last year. It was, it wasn't even the fact that we didn't get big plays. It was like almost every touchdown drive was some 13 play, 6 minute, 7 minute slog down the field.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you get to 30 a game and give your defense a chance to play with a freaking lead? I mean, outside of the Houston game, and I'm not even going to count the opener, very rarely played with a lead. So, can you help your defense out in that regard? But, I would just be interested, talking to Nico or other strength guys or talking to assistant coaches while everybody's milling around before or after practice. Just, why is this year going to be different? I would love to hear all the different answers and see if there's a theme or see if everybody's kind of got something different. I don't know if, and I don't know if we'll ever have, if you guys will ever have the time or the interest in doing that, but I think it would be a fascinating look into how everybody kind of views things, because I am never big on the and I don't think Scott or anyone else ever did the whole like these aren't our guys thing last year. That is a huge pet peeve of mine that some coaches will do. Like, well, when I get my guys in here, you'll see. Well, these are your guys. You took the job; they're your guys. You may not recruited them, but you knew exactly what you were walking into. Maybe not exactly at every
I
place.
don't think they knew exactly. I think they
Well,
thought
I'm
they were
saying-
walking into a little more than they had. But
I'm not saying exactly,
right.
but like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you have some idea. Like, you're not taking it blind. Like, in the interview process and everything, you better be asking the questions and doing as much research as you can. But I don't think I remember anyone ever saying, like, you know, casting blame or saying that these aren't my guys, what have you. But
yeah,
now
they haven't used that as a crutch.
But now, I mean, you brought in like 46, 47 new players. You can't get any more my guys than this.
and 30 plus whatever last year.
Right. That's my point. Like, they're all your guys at this point. So why is 2024 going to be different than 2023? And I don't just mean like 5 wins instead of 3 wins. Like, legitimately better, you know, not appeasing the fan base, but like bringing some people off the cliff, you know, seeing a
lot
true
of people on the cliff.
Well, they, you know, go ahead and jump. That's fine too. But you know, appreciable improvement. Seeing that, yes, things are now moving in the right direction. That 2023 was truly a transition year, and hopefully a blip in a long line of, you know, even Tuberville's first couple years weren't terrible. So, you know, hopefully it's just one of those things that happens in the portal era when a very, very successful coach leaves, while you also move up quite a jump, I think is
well, but
maybe
to be
maybe
fair,
a lot of people underestimated the jump. I think potentially.
To be fair, Tuberville was also the beneficiary of having Big East talent and showing up in the American Athletic Conference, where this is the exact opposite of opposite.
That's what I think. So I think some people maybe the success potentially blinded, you know, or put up some blinders to what the talent truly was because of the success against the American. Yeah. And then in the Big East, or not Big East, in the Big 12, that gap got magnified, you know, in the sense of, yeah, there is that big of a gap. Even from Big 12 to AAC, there is still a substantial gap. And while we were winning and competing and playing well in the American, that's just too different. It's still two different worlds. In a 12 game week in, week out type situation.
Yeah, and the biggest issue is depth. I don't think that. I mean, I think top of the roster, like, you know, they obviously were competitive early in the conference.
There were very few times. I mean, outside of Iowa State,
Kansas.
There were very
Kansas, West Virginia.
Kansas was. I mean, I'm talking before things like truly went. Okay. Like Kansas, that game. I mean, West Virginia too. I mean, things were. We were. People were 1, 2, 3 Cancunin by that point. So, you know, but like Oklahoma, Baylor.
Some of them were 1, 2, 3 Orlando.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like they stepped on the field and like we're down 14-0 on the first 3 and out. Other team scores. 3 and out. Other team scores. Like,
or touchdown, 3 and out, touchdown. You're down 14-0, and there's 10 minutes to go in the first quarter. Yeah,
exactly. So that wasn't the thing that happened. It was more of a cumulative effect in those games. And then once we were at where we were, then, you know, kind of all bets were off at the very end, which you never want to see, but you kind of understand. You got a whole bunch of dudes that were brought on by somebody else having a bad year. I think that's kind of human nature. But
yeah, you know. and your leadership jumped quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like your leadership got to the middle of the season and went, look, I didn't come I didn't come here for this shit.
Right.
And then the walls came tumbling down. So
That's right.
Any other camp questions, David?
I don't think so. I mean, again, first day. Like, how deep can we really go? It's more of a first impression. Did anybody do something, just in 1-on-1s or 7-on-7? Did they even do an 11-on-11 period?
They did at the very end.
Again, there's no pads, so it's like,
yeah,
two-hand touch essentially. So
maybe the most impressive thing of the day, and I didn't see who he did it to because it was on the opposite side of the field, on the far side of the line. But Parker just mauled a guard. Just like, the proverbial, like, picked him up and took him 5 feet into the backfield and dropped him off. And that was like Keegan and I were actually talking about him at that point in time.
I mean, he has legit power. Like, absolute.
That's what I'm saying.
Like 23
the ball was snapped.
23-year-old dude power. He's got it right now.
He came right off the line, snatched the guard, and just, we're going this way.
And you're coming with me.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things, like day one of practice, like, I think you're probably looking across yourself at the freshman defensive end going, really?
What's this guy going to do?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're up off your feet going, whoa, what the fuck?
So kind of like Amarius Mims, like engulfing Miles Murphy at practice yesterday.
Yes. Like
just 6'8", 350. Just
come here, boy.
Yeah.
It was one of, like, that was probably the most impressive thing I saw today. But you're not getting a lot of that because they don't have pads on. But I think what happened was there was the defense jumped off sides. So the two guys that jumped, like, when you commit a penalty or a pre-snap penalty, they take you out and they run 2 new guys in.
Yeah,
so they took 2 guys out. They ran
rep.
2 guys. Yeah, they ran 2 guys in. Parker was one of the guys that they ran in, and it all happened kind of fast. And the ball was snapped, and Keegan and I were talking, and then all of a sudden you just see the helmet of the right guard all the way on the other side of the field.
Be somewhere that it shouldn't be.
Right. Luckily, the play was going left, so it didn't end up like
he would have
the play.
He would have ran him right into the running back or whatever. Yeah.
If it was going right, it would have caught a lot more eyes.
I hope he gets on the field and plays well, because that would be a small feather in my scouting cap.
What?
Because I remember when they were recruiting him, it was him. They brought in him and another edge type player that was rated higher and had a whole mess more offers. And I watched both their tapes, and I was like, I don't understand what whoever's rating these guys for us sees, because this other guy's way better.
Yeah. Look, he's going to play. He's probably going to play a lot.
Yeah.
I'll say that, right? If he continues, if he has a good camp, it's day one of camp. If he has a good camp, he's going to play, and he's probably going to play a lot, which is just not something you see from
freshman defensive linemen. No, yeah. Unless they're like Harold Perkins at LSU.
Right. Now, they list him at 6'4".
He's 6'2" plus, like and a half.
Yeah. Yes. He was standing next to Rob Jackson, and Rob Jackson, like, he was middle of Rob Jackson's helmet. An inch and a half, 2 inches shorter than Rob Jackson. So,
but if he has that,
he's got long arms and he's stronger than shit.
Right. If he's got the strength trait, you can potentially get away with that.
Right.
Being a little more undersized, especially if his arm length is, if he has disproportionate arm length to height and is a power guy, he's not going to be maybe, because he's probably, to be real, freshman, probably doesn't have a whole big repertoire of pass rush moves. He is bull rushing you, and then maybe he's got a spin off of that, or maybe he's got a work. They work in a swim off of that. But this is a dude that's just going to line up and try to put you in the quarterback's lap.
Any freshman going to play on the offensive side?
Kevin Grover probably will.
Kevin Grover will play. There's a lot of talk about Elijah Jones. I don't know if there's enough talk about him that's going to see him get the field this year, but I think a lot of people have been impressed with him since he showed up.
I think that would be hard, just given the other receivers that they brought in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not. It would be easier if he was 6'3", and he could fight into that 2 deep.
He feels like he's right there with Tony Johnson.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's 5'11", 195. Now he looks solid. Like he's not a skinny kid, but he's probably more of a field wide receiver than he is a boundary wide receiver.
Yeah.
So I don't know that you'll see him on the field this year. Maybe if he shows out as like a special teams guy, like he can work his way up the depth chart on special teams and get on the field. But offensively, Grover, probably not anybody else. I can't envision anybody else offensively yet. Maybe that'll change, as we get deeper into camp. But
there's just aren't really
Zaharsky.
I mean, you've got Royer, you've got the kid from Louisville,
Sherman,
you've got Sherman, you've got Grover, and you've got Belgian. Like that's a lot of guys for Zaharsky to jump. They like him. Like,
could he play in some games? Sure, but like I can't imagine he's going to play in more than 4.
Yeah, I just think
if there aren't injuries or something, like
I think the reality is there was one of those guys that was going to have a chance to to move into one of those spots, and even Grover, like he might end up at the end of camp finding himself 4th on that tight end list. And if you're 4th, that makes it hard to get on the field, no matter how high they are on him.
Yeah. If 3 tight ends are healthy, how much are you really using a 4th tight end?
Right. Now,
they want to use tight end. Right. But, yeah. If a guy gets hurt or something, then sure.
Yeah. A couple of those guys are injury prone. So, maybe. But, like, just looking at it straight up, they're really high on Zaharsky, too. He's a different player a little bit than Grover. Like Grover is more of that like pass catching. Zaharsky's more of an inside guy that can run some routes and like it's kind of like Josh and Lenny almost, I guess.
For sure. I mean, Zaharsky's an inline guy. Gavin Grover is a guy that can play attached, but you want him to also play on the outside and take advantage of his frame. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And wide receiver, I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Michael Masari. The staff really likes.
He's going to play.
He's going to play. He'll be a special teams guy for sure, and you'll see him out there some on offense.
Yeah.
I mean, look, here's the thing. He runs good routes and he catches the ball.
Yeah, you don't have almost 2,000 yards receiving and I think it was 18 touchdowns as a senior in high school if you can't get open.
Yeah, he runs good routes and he catches the ball, and that's usually a good recipe for finding your way on the field in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's camp day 1, Dave.
You boys will be out there, rain or shine tomorrow. Could be some rain, hopefully not. But
did you get that storm this morning?
I don't think so.
Oh, our windows were rattling like the house was shaking.
No,
it was so bad.
Yes, Matt from King.
Yeah.
No, I don't. If we did it certainly wasn't to the point of feeling like we were going to depart Earth.
Well, I've got a dog that sleeps in my bed that does not like storms. So my bed was like shaking from him panting and like having a panic attack. And then when I woke up, it was like it sounded like a sound effect guy was outside, like emulating thunder,
Yeah.
is kind of what it sounded like. Like a movie special effect thunder at the Brendel household at 7:30 this morning, which I was hoping to sleep in until like 8:15, knowing that, you know, it's gonna be a long day of practice and chauffeuring to volleyball and then writing a practice report and then getting ready for this and doing a nightcap. And
Yeah.
I didn't get that extra.
Hopefully,
45
better luck tomorrow.
Hopefully. But
Anything on the basketball front worth discussing?
no, I was gonna the plan initially was to head down to practice yesterday, but things got screwed up. I guess summer graduation was in Fifth Third. Schedules got jacked up and practice had to be down in the practice gym, and I didn't get to make it down there. But there, you know, we've talked a bunch about what I've seen so far this summer.
Are there any more events this summer, or is all that stuff over?
That stuff's all ends at the end of July. Okay. So no more AAU. That is all a wrap. I'm working on a hot board, trying to it's difficult because there are secondary options, like the names that are out there that are going to visit, Tillery and Jalen Reese and Davion Hannah and King Grace, like those names are known. Those plans are known. What's difficult is I don't want to just throw a bunch of names out there for the sake of throwing names out there, because honestly, we've seen how this works, Dave. Secondary options aren't really a thing anymore, because if you liked them enough, they would be a primary option. And if you don't like them enough, you're probably going to just go to the portal. And it's a
I don't think you're not taking a whole lot of plan Bs out of high school anymore.
No, because they don't have,
because that means there's some element of their game that needs development, and you just
nobody wants to stay and develop.
You don't have time. They don't want to stay and develop. You don't have time. You'd rather take a kid that you're like,
I think you have time, but I think what you don't want to do is you don't want to spend 2 years or a year, 2 years, whatever,
developing someone else's player.
Yeah. Like that's what the mid-majors are for.
Yeah, you guys develop them, and when they're ready to play, we'll pay for them to come to our school.
I mean, am I wrong?
No, not at all.
Like that's just the way. Like
why would we want to take like I don't know, an 85th ranked player who's not good enough to play yet, but we think can be good in a couple years. He doesn't play, and then he leaves to go somewhere else. And
by the time he gets good enough to play, he leaves and goes somewhere else because he wasn't playing here. And now you just spent 2 years and a couple $100,000 on a kid that barely played and is now going to go somewhere else and be good because of how you developed him.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than football, because even in football, like I think for the most part, guys are going to give you 2 to 3 years, depending on the level of
you need, like, even if you're not a starter in football, like I think guys understand, not that they don't understand it in basketball, but just like the development part and the depth part of it in football. You can be a depth piece in football and still be very important to your team. Whereas in basketball, unless you're, in the top 6 or 7, you could go stretches where you don't play. That doesn't happen in football. Like if you're a depth piece in football, you're still playing a lot.
You're playing special teams. You're rotating in at times. Like let's be honest, injuries are a lot more prevalent in football, where
For
you're
sure.
one snap away from, even if a guy doesn't miss an extended period of time, you're one snap away from playing for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
getting your chance. So yeah, it's just a different world in basketball. So that's what I've been working on, is just kind of like, is there a legitimate secondary group of guys that are, potentially
Yeah, because like I
possible to
feel
come
like,
here.
and you can tell me I'm dead wrong, but with high school kids in basketball now, I feel like in the fall, if you bring them on campus for a visit, that means when the visit's over, if they're like, I want to commit, you're taking the commitment.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Now,
then they're
that
all
is
primary. Then they're
changing.
all primary guys.
Yeah, that is a wild deal now, because there's the 5-visit limit is out,
Right.
and there are these kids that are visiting 7, 8, 9.
Oh yeah.
I think Davion Hannah has 8 visits
No,
set.
8. I thought he had 9.
Well, he has 9. He has a final 9.
The final 9.
Yeah, and 8 visits set, and he's still working on one with the final school. That
We've come a long way from 3 hats on the table.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
gotta
mean,
get a-
I feel like
somebody's gonna have to get a bigger table.
in the fall, if you bring a kid on campus for a football game and you do the whole official visit on Sunday, if that kid says I want to commit, you're taking the commitment, or you wouldn't bring him on campus for a visit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And if you're not willing to bring him in for a visit, if you're not willing to schedule a fall visit,
that should probably tell the kid that I'm not a top option at this school right now.
right? And there's a visit or two scheduled that I don't think will happen. So, the hot board is a work in progress. I'm just trying to.
Well, we want it to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah, I don't want to put a bunch of names on there that are guys that there's no chance they're going to come here. Like,
or that have shown some level of interest, but we may know that interest is not necessarily reciprocated, but we don't want to blow that kid up, and where our fans are following him and being like, well, he's visiting here and he's visiting here. Is he going to visit here? And you can't really come out and be like, guys, he's not really like, I like you a lot. You like me a lot more than I like you type of situation.
Right.
We don't want to do that to a kid. I mean, that's not our place to do that. That gets handled between coach and player. So.
Yeah. So it's a work in progress. Hopefully, I've been working on it for a couple days. I've had 2 phone calls while we've been doing this podcast that I need to call back. So it's processing. It's processing. But yeah. So that's I don't have a ton else new on basketball that's happened, since the last time we really talked basketball. Did we talk football recruiting?
We have not.
Not really. I don't know. I mean, would you like to talk about Gio Contosis, Dave?
I really don't have a ton on him. I've been a busy man lately, so I do know that today they had some guys in today. One of them on the last day that they could host, offensive lineman Xavier Spikes
for a month. Yeah,
from I think Stockbridge, Georgia. He's currently a Georgia State commit. He visited today and was offered. Appears to be an interior guy. And then a linebacker from Tennessee tweeted that he enjoyed his visit. I have not seen. I do not believe they have offered him yet.
He can put the names up of the guys that visited.
Yeah, he has reported offers from Ole Miss, Tulane, Troy, Memphis, some other, several other schools. Could be some. We've talked about it a bunch. They're going to continue to mine. They're going to continue. Senior year matters. So, there will be more names probably pop up as the season gets going, and guys that maybe were close to getting an offer in last year, but they just wanted to see maybe whatever it might be, size development, speed development, overall play development that, has kept them from offering. They did it last year with 2 offensive linemen. So,
and those guys both look pretty good.
They're big dudes.
Big
That's
dudes.
for sure.
I mean, they look like freshman offensive linemen.
Right.
It's going to take a little time, but the framework is there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we know going in. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's good to see them, and they don't show up 2 inches shorter and 30 pounds lighter than they were supposed to be.
Yeah. They're actually 6'4", 260.
That guy was 6'6", 285 when they recruited him. Now he's 6'4", 262. What?
Yeah.
I'm confused. He went from a tackle to a guard real quick.
Yeah. We've had enough of them over the last several years.
Yeah, guys that, that's a tackle, and then they get to campus, and you're like,
yeah, in the MAC.
Yeah.
Not in the Big 12.
No, that's but even in the American, like they would bring these guys in that they recruited or said were tackles.
Yeah.
They would get to campus, and you would go, I don't think that doesn't look like that. It's like a guard.
We didn't even. We're now in 46 minutes in, and we didn't even get to my favorite thing that happened last week.
Go ahead.
Anyone who's listened to this show for long enough knows that I've been at the forefront of the cancel the Miami series.
Oh yeah, God's hand to the Bible, Dave. I had already forgotten. I broke the story.
I know.
It's Wednesday. That was Friday. I had already moved on to the point that it didn't even cross my mind.
I know.
The hour and 46 minutes we've been doing this podcast.
I didn't either. It didn't either for me until I said Mac about offensive linemen, and then I thought about it. So we don't need to belabor the point. You guys talked about it a ton, when it happened. But, my reason behind it has always been I'm an advocate of UC. I'm a UC fan. We need to do things that benefit UC. And we got to a point, in my opinion, that playing that game just really didn't have any benefit to UC. I do feel bad for the segment of the fan base that does truly like the rivalry game, because I fully understand, I think someone even started a thread on the board, who's our football rival now? And we can joke about, well, we'd won 16 games in a row, so they weren't really a rival. But, I mean, it's still what, to a large segment of the fan base, it still mattered. And it was still a rivalry to them, even with the performance on the field.
I think all of us just don't want to say that it's Orlando Tech.
It's certainly more them than West Virginia right now. You have to build back up to West Virginia. That was its own thing in Big East days. But then when you take a 10-year hiatus, you don't just get to just go, they don't look at us all of a sudden as our big rival's back on the schedule. It will
I don't think UC fans look at them like that.
No, it'll take some years to build that back up. So yeah, I would definitely say that UCF is that school, but even that is that's in the world of sports rivalries. That thing is a 2-week-old newborn,
right?
So I just it got to the point for me where it's what are we getting out of this? We should be doing things for our benefit.
It lasted so long that both teams got there.
Right.
Both teams got to the point of this isn't benefiting us.
No.
It's usually when a rivalry is time to end.
Yeah. And I have no issue with it, because I
should have let you break it. I should have let you break the news. That's what I should have
would have probably broken in a much less diplomatic and professional manner. But on my own personal...
Did you see my Twitter that day? Who says I was professional about it?
On my personal Twitter, I really could have had a good one. But no, it's, it will now not ensure, because there's always going to be oddities, but, UC will now more than likely have 7 home games, at least 7 home games almost every season.
Unless
And
there's a neutral site game, if there's neutral site games, that'll.
Or sometimes it's just not going to work out where they get the 4 Big 12 home games and are able to schedule all 3 non-conference games at home. I'm sure there's going to be an instance where that doesn't work out. That's going to be the goal every year.
Sure.
And it's going to be the goal to try to get some years where you have 8 home games, where you can somehow get the 3 non-conference games at home plus the 5 conference games. But yeah, I think it's a benefit. You're going to have more money here soon. So you pay a little bit more for a different G5 team, but I'd rather pay $1 million, $1.2 million for an extra home game, honestly, at this point. Because if you win those games, no one gives a shit how much you paid that team to come here.
Well, and Dave, if you're winning,
right,
and there's people in the stands, that covers
you want
far more than the cost
games.
It covers the 1.2 million pretty easily.
Yeah.
Although, knowing how those games have been, it won't be 1.2 for long. And the SEC and the Big Ten are already paying 1.6.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Money. You got anything else?
No, I don't think so.
You can finish your point.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, those teams they need that budget. I mean, Miami already plays a very, very low level FCS. I don't even know I think the MAC plays 8 league games. So they're essentially, because they were already playing another UC level team. A lot of times it's a Big Ten school. I know they've played Northwestern and Iowa and some of those teams, Minnesota a couple years ago, I remember up at their place. So they're just going to probably load up on $3 million plus games and see if we can maybe pull off an upset and then try to win the MAC, which is exactly how I would do it if I was them. I mean, the MAC as a whole is in a really, really tough spot financially.
Yeah.
Very, very tough spot financially. So them wanting to get out and, taking a as I've heard it referred to recently, a prostitute game. It used to be called a buy game, then it was a money bag game, and now it's a body bag
now
game.
It's just straight prostitution.
Yeah, now we're just whoring ourselves out for $1.5 million in a loss. But, that's unfortunately where, college athletics.
Oh, look, if you're smart, you schedule Northwestern and Vandy, and you get your money, and
maybe you get a win. Yeah. Yeah. If you play at Northwestern over the next couple of years, you'll be playing at very similar surroundings to Yager Stadium. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Their 15,000 seat pop-up
home
stadium
away from home.
they're having to use. It's right on the water. It's probably cool setting.
Probably a great place to watch a high school game.
Yeah. But anyway, no, I don't really I don't think I have anything else. So
all right. Well, that's gonna wrap it up. Stay tuned. We will have 60% off BearcatJournal.com now.
We really do a great job of promoting ourselves. We wait until the hour 53 mark to drop our promo now.
Yeah. Oh well. That's the BCJ podcast. We'll see you next time. It's brought to you by the Holy Grail, Homefield Apparel, Turtles Brew, right here on BearcatJournal.com.